Oh, that is so lovely. And Paige, I'm an alcoholic. No, and it really is a privilege to speak on the 12th step. I mean, the 12th step is ultimately the message of hope that we have in Alcoholics Anonymous. When I come to Alcoholics Anonymous and I get that experiential step one experience, what that is hopeless. My step one experience is the reality that if I have this illness, I will drink again. But step 12 offers the hope. The hope is that a spiritual awakening is sufficient enough to overcome alcoholism. And the 12th step is essentially broken down into three parts. The first part of step 12 is having had a spiritual awakening as the result, not even a result, the result of these 12 steps. This course of action. What is the directions that are outlined in this book? And if you're new, I know we didn't have anyone that was like new, but if you're like a little new, just a little, just a scotch, just a tad, or maybe perhaps just a little bit coming back, only a little. What I want you to know is that is a promise. That is a promise. That any alcoholic who takes this course of action as outlined in the book Alcoholics Anonymous will get the result. And the result is a spiritual awakening, and it is nothing less than that. But it's important to talk about what is a spiritual awakening. Because when I was here and I was new, I didn't really want one, to be honest with you. I was like, ew, that sounds gross, yucky. Is it like cooties? I didn't think it was like cooties, but I thought it was your God stuff, and I thought it was a little much, and no thank you. But what is a spiritual awakening? What does it look like? Now, there's a number of places in the book that describe it. And at PPG, at the end of the meeting, we kick off with some of, not all of, but some of the step 12 promises. And it talks about nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. The first part of the spiritual awakening, or at least the most prevalent, the most important part of the spiritual awakening, especially if we are here and we have this illness. Again, to reiterate, what it means to be an alcoholic is that it means that I will drink again. I need a way to not drink again. I need something that is going to tear from me, rend from me, take from me that obsession of the mind. The thought that I have when I am as sober as I am today, but my illness is untreated. The thought that tells me I can take a drink. This time will be different. Nobody will ever know. I just got to get it out of my system. My problem was drinking in Calgary, but if I go down to Lethbridge, it'll be different. I assure you it was windy, but no different. Right? And I need that thought gone. Now, in step 10, we have what are described as the 10th step promises. And this is part of the awakening process. That we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time, the problem will be removed. If I am tempted, I will recoil from it as from a hot flame. I will react sanely and normally, and this has happened automatically. I'm not even fighting it. I'm not swearing off. I'm not trying to raise a defense. I'm not trying to play the tape to the end. It is gone. It is taken from me. And so what is available for the spiritual awakening is that I get to experience permanent sobriety. Now, with all these promises, there's some fine print, which is rude. You know, we read the 9th step promises at meetings as if they're the only ones, and if we just show up and we get them. Rude. Do you know what you need to do in order to get the 9th step promises? At least half of your amends, or, come on. Can't I just put a little extra in the 7th and give me some, No, I got to do it. So what is on offer is permanent sobriety. But that permanent sobriety is contingent. It's contingent on me living this way of life on a daily basis. It talks about we have a daily reprieve. A reprieve is just a fancy word for a stay of execution. And you see, as an alcoholic, I have a death sentence. That's what alcoholism is. And imagine that I'm on death row. And it's like every day the guard comes and gets me out of my cell and marches me to the execution chamber. And one by one I get strapped in, one strap by one strap by one strap. And at the 11th hour, a call comes on the red phone on the wall. It's the governor that says, okay, we're not going to execute her today. That's what I get, a stay of execution. And again, that's what I'm up against. But my stay of execution, what is it contingent upon? It is contingent upon the maintenance of my spiritual condition, which is, again, a little rude, because it's like, I got to keep doing this? Come on. But it is contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition, not on my spiritual condition, which is to say my sobriety is not contingent on how I feel. My sobriety is contingent on what I do. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that spiritual experience, but I seem to be naturally drawn to talking about the second and third parts of step 12. The third part is to practice these principles in all my affairs. Now, I take a bit of a controversial stance. For me, the principles are not these concepts behind the steps. Now, if you believe that, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I just take a different look. For me, the spiritual principles are the tangible actions of the 12 steps. Not ideas, not concepts, but instead the actions that I take, the inventory that I write, that I then share with another person. I ask for what I see to be removed. I make amends where I've caused harm. I deepen the relationship that I'm building with this power in step 11, in prayer and meditation and that continued inventory. And I do that on a daily basis. On a daily basis. You see, Alcoholics Anonymous, I often think it's what happens between the moment of silence and the serenity prayer. But Alcoholics Anonymous is what happens from the serenity prayer to the moment of silence. It is how I live my life in the world, practicing these 12 steps in the world. That is what I've got to do. Like my life depends on it, because it does. That's what I got to do. And the more that I do that, the deeper the experience that I get. And you see, I don't know about you guys, but I wasn't leaving any left in the bottle. You know what I mean? I was not sipping, and you guys have heard me talk about this. I was not sipping my drinks. You know, there was not one of those little umbrellas that never been in sight with my drinking, you know. Use a crack pipe as an umbrella. No, okay. But I come here and I want to do this thing in a way that I never drank. You see, I might want to just dip my toe in, or take my time, or take it easy, or not get so involved. But you see, my life depends on diving in. But just like I could not stay well on one drink. Anyone here ever have one drink and think, that's good, I'm all done? Nope, I have a feeling not. I can't stay well on one spiritual experience. The spiritual experience that I have is one that I need to grow and to deepen over time. And a lot of times we come to the rooms and we hear, well, the best that you can hope for is a spiritual experience of the educational variety, which is nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. The more work that I put in, the harder that I go after this, just like I went after a drink, the more powerful an experience that I can have. And I've had deep and powerful experiences. I can't do that if I'm waiting a year to write inventory, you know. I can't experience that at that depth if I make, one amends every 6 months. I got to go after it. But my experience is the more that I went after it, the more that I have awakened, the more that I have experienced, the more that is on offer. There is always an end to the bottle. But there is not an end to the experience that I get to have in Alcoholics Anonymous if I'm willing to go after it, if I'm willing to chase it, if I'm willing to grow and deepen. And you see, what we get to experience is not just physical abstinence. What I get to experience is not just physical abstinence, which is good, because sobriety is not a solution to my alcoholism. Which again is rude. I kind of thought I just had to get sober, like I'm sober. But every time I took that first drink, I was sober. Sobriety is not a solution. I need relief. And you see, sometimes we talk about emotional sobriety like it's this top tier extra special. It's for the nerds with the highlighters. That became me. It wasn't me when I got here. But emotional sobriety is the point. It is the point. I don't have to go and chase it out and trying to manage. What I can do is I can work this thing and I get to experience it. On page 52, it talks about the bedevilments. And in the bedevilments, it describes the human condition, what it is like to live without alcohol, what it is like to live without a solution. I cannot diagnose my illness based on that, but that is what we treat. And it talks about having a feeling of uselessness, being full of fear, a prey to misery and depression. I can't make a living, feeling of uselessness. Can't seem to be of real help to other people. That is who I am on my own power. But I come and I take a course of action that I don't like, that I don't believe in, that I don't think will help, that I think you're out of your mind if it's going to work for somebody like me. And what happens is the fears fall from me. It talks about that in the 5th step promises. What happens is I become somebody I never thought I could be. I'm able to show up to life, not all the way successfully because it's me, but I'm able to show up to life with a sense of peace, a sense of serenity, a sense of happiness, a joy that is not my own. Man, there is so much greater here than just don't drink. And how do I experience the miracle that is on offer? Well, I work these 12 steps as a way of life like my life depends on it, because it does. Now, the second part of step 12, because I spoke about part 3 before part 2, because that's how we're doing today, is that idea that we carry this message to others. This message. What is the message? The message is not my message. It is my experience with the message. The message is the spiritual awakening is sufficient to overcome alcoholism. That the 12 steps is outlined in the book Alcoholics Anonymous is a course of action that will take me from the inevitable relapse, the hopelessness of my illness, to the hope that is available on offer. Nothing will so much ensure permanent sobriety as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message. This message. Now, and here's my experience. It's got to be intensive. I got some bad news. And I tell it to my sponsees all the time. If I'm not a little inconvenienced, I'm not working with enough people. I'm not saying you can't have hobbies. I don't, but I'm not saying you can't have hobbies. But I got to be a little inconvenienced. And I get to ask myself, and I continue to ask myself, is how I am taking people through the steps intensive? Now, a lot of people that work with me are like, yep, that's pretty intense, Paige. Well, I was told to be intensive. But here's the thing. I have grown in sponsorship. You know, being at this meeting, it was 2 cycles ago through step 12. I remember we were talking on step 12, and it was a completely different group of people. But it was a lot of, everyone shared. I had never taken anyone through the steps. I'd never sponsored anyone. And they were all coming back. And I think that is an experience, you know? When somebody relapses, it's not what happened. What happened is inevitable. It's what we don't do. But if you're like me, man, I'm afraid to sponsor. I'm afraid I'm going to make it worse. I got some news. Alcoholism is a progressive, incurable, fatal disease. Illness. It's as bad as it's going to get. I can't show up and make it worse. But if I show up with my experience with these steps, my experience with this book, with a connection to a power greater than myself, I might just be able to help. And I want you to know that I learned how to work with others by doing it wrong, by making mistakes. My sponsorship style has changed. I'm not one of those, I have never, and I mean this, I have never been sponsored in the way that I work with others. But the way in which I work with others, I do because it works, because I can see that it works. And if you're here today and you haven't had this experience, what I want you to know is this. When we carry this message to others, when I get to carry this message to others, what I have found was everything that I was looking for in the bottle. Everything that I was looking for in the bottle. And it is available to each and every one of us. And here's the thing, people like me who have recovered from this illness, my responsibility to those who have not is not just to show you how to get well,
But my responsibility to you is to also show you how you can help others get well. This is the magic you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. This has become the bright spot of our lives. So thank you for the opportunity to share.